Hello and welcome. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you're joining us from. For once, it's Thursday, not Wednesday. Because of personal commitments, had to shuffle our dates for this week a little bit. So unusually, but this Thursday, we're live with two exceptional guests, two incredible gentlemen of the tobacco world, tobacco royalty, we can say, in the house today, joining us here at the Light 'em Up Lounge. I would love to welcome all of you joining us here via Zoom, but also to all our dear friends and fellows joining us over on the Facebook live stream. Thanks for taking the time and joining us today. But without further ado, I would love to introduce our two special guests for today. And it is a privilege and a pleasure, a great honor to welcome John Oliva Jr. and Trey, Angel Oliva, here at the Light 'em Up Lounge with us today. John, Trey, thank you so much for taking the time and welcome to Light 'em Up.
Thanks for having us, Reinhard.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, I would love to start with an anecdote. Just a few months ago, Trey and I we were wandering through the hallways of Corona Cigar, and when I say hallways, I literally mean, for all of you who've been, it's just massive. And you walk through the aisles surrounded by the world's best cigars and the finest tobacco you could possibly imagine. And Trey was just casually pointing left and right to various different cigars, all of which happen to carry one of the precious tobaccos from the Oliva family. And I'm very curious to both of you, still today, after close to a century worth of family history and legacy in the tobacco world, supplying the finest and most elaborate cigar manufacturers with the best raw material, what does it mean to you when you walk through these aisles and when you walk through these humidors and you see all these cigars from people that you treasure, people that have become friends and family to you, but most importantly, proudly working with your amazing product?
No, it's always, listen, it's always, you got to, in our end of the business, since there's not a lot of marketing done with what we do, growing tobacco, a lot of times, people don't listen. To this day, people confuse us with the Oliva cigar people. That's always why they love our cigars. I have to tell them that's not us. But no, there's, we're like the gray man. And that's what I like to say. I like to say we're the gray man in the cigar business because, you never know how much thought people really give, people that not people that are enthusiasts, but the general cigar public gives the attention of where the raw material that goes into the cigars is. So, there's a certain satisfaction in that these guys are creating something that everybody loves with something that you grew.
Yeah, it feels pretty good, I must say, sometimes. And, they get all the limelight. Nobody knows who we are. We're at the bottom of the food chain. And it's nice to see my product out there on various cigars that are out there.
And I would say that it's quite the understatement because the Oliva tobacco family, I use the word tobacco royalty specifically because I think there's not even a handful of families and companies that work at the level that you do. And yet, as you rightfully said, so many cigar enthusiasts and people who appreciate the finest cigars in the world are not familiar with the contribution that you have made to the tobacco and cigar world, and oftentimes what they're actually smoking and which hands it originally came from. Just to give everybody a bit of an understanding and a bit of background, I said close to a century worth of family history and legacy. I think it's now coming to 90 years of Oliva tobacco history, if I'm not mistaken. Can you just tell us a little bit about those early days, how the family initially started and how you managed to build an empire of tobacco working with pretty much all of the most respected and best established cigar manufacturers in the world.
Well, from that, you got to start at the beginning with my grandfather, who made all this possible. And if there's really anybody in our business and Oliva Tobacco Company who's a superstar here, was absolutely my grandfather. My grandfather had 11 brothers and sisters and grew up in Cuba. His father was a tobacco farmer in Cuba, and actually worked for the Cuba Land Tobacco Company in Santa Damiana and the oil farms, all that area in Cuba, Pinar del Rio. And they were dirt poor. So but he grew up in the tobacco business. I mean, he grew up in this growing tobacco. My grandfather, that's what the family did. All the kids worked. And he came over to the United States, like a lot of immigrants, in 1925 to find his fortune. I don't think he wanted to go into the cigar business or tobacco business, because growing up the way they did, it was tough. My grandpa used to pick up bat guano for I don't know, like a penny a bag or something, because that's what they would use to fertilize tobacco back then. And eventually, after one failed business in he got into the dry clean business. That failed. He got back into the cigar business here in Tampa with an older gentleman named Johnson. As you know, Tampa back in those days was the center of the cigar world, outside of Cuba. And he started working with this tobacco brokerage firm. And then when the gentleman didn't want to take him as a partner, he decided to strike out on his own. And from there, he started Oliva Tobacco Company, brokering tobacco. Then they started growing tobacco on their own farms in Cuba, and handling tobacco really from all over the world. And then, obviously, of course, when the embargo hit, my grandfather was one of the first people to go over to Honduras to start looking for alternative tobaccos as Cuban tobacco, because the cigar people here in Tampa, the business was, I mean, that was 100% almost Cuban tobacco. One of the things he did do before the embargo was acquire, I have an article there from 1963 that they wrote about him. He acquired 1.3, I believe it was 1.3 million pounds of Cuban tobacco that he got out before the embargo, because he knew what was going to happen with Castro. And that was this was a guy with a 4th grade education that was incredibly perceptive, and really kept a lot of guys in Tampa and cigar tobacco until they were able to start working these alternative tobaccos from other countries into their blends. And from there, the business has just grown. We were at one point operating in 4 countries. Now we're just operating in Ecuador and Nicaragua. We were operating in Honduras, was our original base of operation, then Ecuador, and obviously Nicaragua at the same time. And we were in the Dominican Republic. The farm that we owned in the Dominican Republic subsequently became what is now known as the Opus Farm, Carlito Fuentes' Opus Farm. But I need to preface that by saying that when we had it and what Carlito's done with it are completely two different things. Okay. And from there we've just grown, and like you said, I mean, there's very few of us family owned that are still in this end of the business.
Was it actually a specific thought or a concept that you said, well, let's rather stay behind the scenes. Let's rather work as the unassuming behind the scenes giants of the industry, and quietly, pull the strings and help all these people to create these mystical products and these incredible blends, but to deliberately take that step back and rather work on the back end.
That was my grandfather's philosophy. Okay. In our business back in the day, even when I started in this business, it wasn't, cigar growers really didn't get into this. We didn't get into the cigar business. Tobacco growers, I mean. My grandfather's philosophy is we kind of stay out of that so that we're not competing against our customers, Of course, our customers are all growing their own tobacco now, but that's always kind of been our philosophy, that we were going to just handle this into the business so that we didn't conflict with our customers.
Obviously, when you manage to stay in business for such a long time and build such an eclectic collection of the very best customers and build such a tobacco empire and dynasty, it takes an incredible amount of hard work, commitment, blood, sweat, and tears, as we always say in the tobacco industry. But one thing that I particularly learned in the cigar and tobacco world is the values and beliefs that it takes, and that you truly have to stand by these and cherish them and foster them. And that's something that's very rare in today's world and society, I feel. And it's something that I will always love the tobacco and cigar world for, is keeping that flame alive of certain traditions and values that you rarely see. When you speak about your grandfather, John, what are some of these key attributes or values that you think truly made Oliva Tobacco stand out and lay at the foundation of what the family have built throughout the decades?
I think part of it is listen, obviously it took a lot of risks to go to Honduras, to go to Nicaragua, to go to these countries where there was, at that time, we're talking 1960, 1961, where there was absolutely no infrastructure. Okay. And, one of the things with our end of the business is you've got to find an area where tobacco grows well, where you're going to get good tasting tobacco. And that in and of itself is an art. I mean, you look at guys like my grandfather, guys like Nestor Plasencia, the Perez's, all the people that do what we do. These people, they have a natural instinct for finding areas that are going to grow, the right microclimates in the soil, which to me is most important, where you're going to grow, flavorful tobacco. It's like my dad says, all the nicest places in these countries, the tobacco is always the shittiest. Okay. Tobacco always grows, it always grows in the least pleasant places. So that was one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is that I think we take, and have always taken, a great deal of care in the part after the growing. In other words, the fermentation, the care of the tobacco after it's in the field. That's what we do, and we send all our tobacco to Nicaragua to be processed. And one of the things that I'm most proud of is what we do with our tobacco after we grow it, which is, I'd welcome anybody to go to our facility in Nicaragua and watch, and look and see how we treat tobacco with the fermentation and the aging and everything else that we do there. I mean, that's really where I think we stand out.
Trey, how does that feel to you? And I mean, obviously, working alongside family, as we all know, is a blessing and a burden at the same time. But it's inspiring to see all of you working alongside each other and handling the business across borders and in various different countries, some of which are incredibly challenging environments to keep such a business alive today.
Yeah, it takes a lot of people and having the trust in your people too, and I think and just being fair. My product comes out every year different. I cannot have the same magic bullet that I did this year in fermentation as I did the year before, because it rained, it suned, and what comes out, and I got to be fair. And the fairer I am, the easier it seems to work for us. And that's what I think my grandfather has instilled, and I kind of still try to uphold to. And I think we're all pretty positive around here. We try to remain as positive as possible,
especially this year.
Well, I mean, there's quite many challenges, some of which we will discuss in just a moment. And Trey, we spoke about this, that Ecuador in particular with the last couple of months has been a tremendous challenge to maintain that level of quality and still get out the very finest tobaccos you could possibly imagine. But let's maybe go a step back, and we have people joining us from all over the world, from Southeast Asia, the Middle East, Europe, the US, but also from all various different levels of experience and expertise when it comes to tobacco and cigars. So just to set some of the basics, a lot of the tobacco that you supply to cigar manufacturers is on their end particularly priced as the finest wrapper tobacco. And I know you do a bit of filler tobacco as well, obviously, as a natural consequence, but truly what's the big standout is the incredible wrapper tobacco that you supply to the icons of the cigar industry. Share with us a little bit of sort of the basic understanding so that people can just get a grasp and the base understanding of the magnitude of what you're actually doing, the amount of tobacco that you're outputting every single year, and in particular, where you grow and which seed varietals you're primarily focusing on.
Our principal focus, our biggest wrapper growing operations in Ecuador, and our principal focus has always been on the darker, heavier tobaccos, which would be your Habano seeds, your Sumatra seeds. We do a little bit of Connecticut. We do a lot. We do our own seeds that we develop, but are along the lines of Habano seed. We do some Candela still in Ecuador for the mass market, but principally what we do are the darker, heavier tobaccos in line with Cuban seed and Sumatra, and some Connecticut. We do between 1 and 2 million pounds of wrapper a year out of Ecuador. I don't want to get into specific numbers, but that always depends on the year and what we're dealing with weather-wise. But yeah, as far as what, if you want to call it our specialty, that's what I would say we specialize in the most is our Cuban seed and our Sumatra. That's kind of how we I guess you could say that's kind of how we made our name. I mean, when the Ashton VSG first came out with our Sumatra wrapper, that was really kind of what established that for us as far as
Guana.
Yeah. And like Gloria Guana was another one. Those were principally Sumatras, which is really what we started with, that in the Connecticut and Candela that we were doing over there. And we gradually moved into the Cuban seed. And now Cuban seed is probably our number one wrapper.
Just to put that number that you mentioned into perspective, when you say between 1 and 2 million of output there, how many cigars roughly are we talking about that you could manufacture with that amount of wrapper tobacco?
Oh God, Reinhard, I'd have to try to
estimate 10 pounds per 1,000.
Well, it depends on the
Depends
priming.
on the
It depends on the prime.
Let's just say rule of thumb: 10 pounds of wrapper, 10 pounds of binder, and 30 pounds of filler makes you 1,000 cigars. Now,
unless it's Connecticut,
broadleaf, it's going to be 20 pounds. Connecticut's going to be 7 pounds of wrap. So, but in our wheelhouse, that's a good rule of thumb. So, do the math.
Of course, it very much.
And listen, all that doesn't come out wrapper.
Yeah.
That's another interesting point. When you say that you primarily focus on wrapper, is there an average yield that you're targeting or that you would hope for in a good year to get from the crop?
Listen, I try for 100. I try for 100%, which is impossible. And if we come out 75%, again, we're at the mercy of the weather. So if we come out 75%, then we consider it a successful year. It's not, and by weather and all the other things that come with that, would you get a black shank in the soil or whatever. Ecuador has been Ecuador, the worst thing we contend with in Ecuador is like a year this year with El Nino or volcanoes has been another thing. The ash from the volcanoes. So
what I love is when you mentioned those light bulb moments when the industry truly understood the unique value that you were proposing with the tobacco you were selling. What were the biggest challenges in growing that operation to the magnitude that we're looking at today? Because there's so many varietals to look at, right? The land, of course, maintaining the seeds, that is like for a bourbon distiller, it's the yeast strain that they treasure for decades and they keep in their vaults. It's the people that you need. What were some of those biggest hurdles for you, and still today, not only maintaining the business but growing it and keeping it at that extreme level?
Our biggest hurdles is like what I'm relaying to you. I mean, it's very easy to grow a farming operation when you find the right area. Okay. Again, in our business, the hardest thing for us is, again, we are at the mercy of nature. I don't get, if a cigar maker's got a 10 million cigar production, he's got a 10 million cigar production. It's not going to stop no matter whether he gets the tobacco from me or somebody else, he's going to make it. With us, if I get a year like this year where it starts raining and wipes out my crop, I'm done. I mean, I'm not gonna, I can't grow that thing. So our challenges are always nature related. Okay, listen, we've been through revolutions, we've been through, you go through strikes and everything else like that, which we've been fortunate. We've never really experienced that much of that. But those are your biggest challenges in what we do. Okay.
And another very interesting thing is that the cigar industry seems to be going through certain phases and trends when particular wrapper types seem to be more popular. There was a time when everybody was looking for the next broadleaf cigar. Obviously, Sumatra seems to have had quite a bit of a moment with way more attention from the consumer side as well. I think that the same could be said about Mexican San Andres, for example. How do you deal with those trends? Did you even look at that or pay attention to that? Or does it all just kind of like pan out and work out in the end?
We always try different seeds. Listen, the base, like I said before, our base is Cuban seed and Sumatra. There's variations that you can do on that. With experimenting with seeds and everything else like that, like we're looking for yield, it may give you a different taste or whatever. But basically, it's always going to be Cuban seed. It's always some variation of Cuban seed, always some variation of Sumatra, some variation of Connecticut seed. And listen, this is completely my opinion, and you'll have people that telling me I'm nuts. Okay. Where you achieve different tastes with tobacco, what we do, I really believe is with your soil. So when we start acquiring different land or we start growing different areas of the farm, I'll have manufacturers that want specifically tobacco. Carlito Fuente is a good example. We have an area in one of our operations that we call the Bajo. It runs right along a river there in Ecuador. And Carlos loves that tobacco from down in that bottom, and it definitely has a different taste. Okay. And that's specifically what I try to get for him. Pepin Garcia is another guy. They like their tobacco from another area on the farm. So when we try to do something different within the varietals of the seed, it's usually on that plot of land, and that's where you achieve a different taste.
In that regard, John, is the development that you work on or that you invest in, is that mostly proactive, where you try to play around with different seeds, explore new plots of land, and then you see what the outcome is and offer that to the manufacturers? Or is it more reactive, and I mean it in a positive way, of course, where you get a very specific request from the manufacturer already, like a chef who's looking for that one particular spice or that one top note and nuance that he wants to incorporate into his recipe, his blend. And then you go and look into the archives as to what tobacco would particularly fulfill that need.
Yeah, yeah,
It's more like the first time you said it.
yeah,
We'll do it.
We're both proactive and we have to be reactive because the cigar business now is about coming out with new product all the time. And I understand everybody's trying to separate themselves and everything else, like, having something different. From our end, I'll take a Corojo seed, for example. It's easier for me to use examples of my own customers. Like the Newmans make a Perla Del Mar Corojo. I took our Corojo seed, which was a derivative of a seed that we've had for a long time. And what I'll do then is I take that seed and grow it on different parts of the farm to see where it grows best. Because the other thing that I have to take into consideration for our viability is, Corojo is a difficult seed to grow well, and it doesn't grow very big, and the yields are poor on it. So I'm trying to find an area where I want the tobacco obviously to taste well, but I got to find a place where it's going to grow good too, because that seed is very susceptible to a lot of diseases, and so to answer your question, we'll take our seeds unless they request, and we're always growing different stuff for these manufacturers to try. Okay. But from our end, I try to find the areas on the farm where I think that thing's going to taste, where we think it's going to taste best, But yeah, we're reactive when they ask for, they may ask for something. We try growing broadleaf in Ecuador, and we'll try anything, Now whether it becomes commercially viable is something different, But I would say it's a little bit of both as far as being reactive and what we're always going to do.
On that note, are there certain things where you feel with the plots of land that you are stewarding and taking care of, there's certain things that just won't work, and that you would mark as complete and utter failure in terms of the output, like certain seed varietals that just wouldn't come out beautifully out of the plots of land in Ecuador, for example?
Listen, we've gotten tobacco. I'll use Cameroon as an example. We grew some Cameroon in Ecuador. It came out beautiful. Problem with it is a lot of it had white vein, okay, which is not going to work for wrappers. But the main issue was that particular Cameroon didn't taste like Cameroon from Africa, and you're trying to copy something that is very, very unique. Obviously Cuban seed from Ecuador is not going to taste like Cuban seed grown in Cuba, okay? But it just didn't have the flavor, so it wasn't something that was ever going to be, I don't think, viable, And that's an example of one of those seeds that I really believe you can get something unique out of it grown in another country, but Cameroon is just one of these tobaccos that's just unique to Cameroon, the flavor.
And that's a very interesting point, John, because Cameroon, in essence, is Sumatra seed, right? What makes it Cameroon is that it is grown in Cameroon. It's an origin, like a great Morage, white Burgundy it's a Chardonnay grape, most likely, right? But people treasure it for its particular origin, less for the seed variety. When you say that you were experimenting with Cameroon, was it a different strain of Sumatra seed that you were utilizing, or seeds that you took from Cameroon and you tried in Ecuador? Or was it in effect a Sumatra seed?
It was in effect. It's all basically a Sumatra seed. But this was a Cameroon seed that was developed over there that somebody gave us some. Somebody in this tobacco business, another prominent, I don't want to say who, but another grower gave it to us, and we tried it. again, it came out beautiful. It looked like Cameroon, but it just, the flavor wasn't there, you know. I mean, it's like, you know, Cuban seed is a seed that's it's adaptable, so it picks up a different flavor wherever you grow it. And but it's an acceptable flavor. This Cameroon and Ecuador just didn't have a flavor that we were looking for, or anything that honestly that I wanted to sell.
And obviously the tobacco seeds are quite adaptable to their natural environment. Would you say that after 3, 4, maybe 5, 6, whatever it is, after a certain amount of generations, the seed will have become a thing of its own, and its own animal based on the natural and surroundings and the natural environment?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I mean, the seed will adapt. Yeah. And some seeds degenerate. The seed that we started growing in Ecuador is no longer the seed that we're growing anymore. I mean, we had to adapt it. The seed actually had to be adapted. Listen, it's still a viable seed. We call it seed 6. The problem with it is from our end. If I was a cigar manufacturer, it wouldn't matter, but I have to sell everything that I grow. And the original Sumatra seed, first of all, it doesn't give you a beautiful leaf. What you're growing it for is pure flavor. The tobacco tastes incredible, but the first 4 primings in that tobacco is a disaster. Okay, I mean, it just is you know, they green it in the barns because it's so hot there. So if the humidity's and everything's not correct when it goes into the barn, you run the risk of getting green cast wrappers, and it's susceptible to all kinds of ground viruses and everything else like that. And you basically you count out the first 4 primings. You know, for me, for a grower, I grow 8 primings of tobacco. You know, you're basically wiping out half that plant, you know. So we had to come up with an alternative that would give us some nice tobaccos, thinner tobaccos and lower primings. The upper priming gives you that dark, heavy Sumatra that everybody loves. But I'm in a position where I got to sell the whole damn plant, you know.
Yeah.
And I don't, you know, growing a binder crop is going to put me on the street. Okay? I got 2 kids in college. All right. You know, so yeah, the you know, yeah, that's just what it is. I mean, it's
Would normally the lower primings lend themselves more towards binder in general, or do you also have certain seed varietals and certain tobaccos where all of the 8 primings that you're looking for would be perfectly suitable for rapid tobacco, just in different
we
levels
try to
of
get
thickness
wrapper
and
to and we try to get the wrapper off the whole plant. Now your sand leaves, your first priming for back are gonna, you know, pretty much that's a write-off. I mean, you know, that's going to end up binder. But I'm trying, what you're doing there along the plant, especially in Ecuador, since we're not growing under shade cloth, we're growing under the sun, is you're getting obviously thinner tobacco on those first 4 primings, and you start moving up in tiempo in the texture that you're going in. So, you know, everybody can use the thinner tobacco. They can use the heavier tobacco because they're going to make different cigars with it. That's the beauty of the plant. You know, you're going to, that second or third priming in Sumatra doesn't taste like that 8th priming, that Corona priming on the same plant. So, you know, there's it's like a chef working with different, you know, with the same ingredient, but from a different farm or a different, I don't know, that's not a good way of saying it, but, you know, just it's a different animal at the bottom of the plant. That flavor profile changes as you move up the plant.
beautiful. And I love the fact that you give us the opportunity and the pleasure of taking a bit of a deep dive with tobaccos, with information that are not as readily available to a lot of the cigar enthusiasts, and most of our viewers, of course, are cigar lovers and consumers. And I'm curious to hear all the questions, because there's plenty piling up and plenty of people who have their hands up. Macy, you were first, so please chime in and welcome. Macy, you're just muted.
You're on mute. You be careful what you wish for. Thank you so much. This is, I don't think there's been a lounge episode I've looked forward to more than this one. One of the highlights of my life was last year at the Puro Sabor Festival. I got to take a tour of the ASP, the Perez facilities. And if you've not, there is nothing better in my mind than being in tobacco farms, looking at the pilones and seeing the fermentation. It's just, to me, it's the unsung hero of the process. I was talking about cigar makers hoping they don't mess up the work that the growers and others have done. So this, anyway, I'll get to my questions, but and I'll say, I was at El Titan de Bronce, Sandy Cobas's factory. I dropped in on her. She's the sweetest lady. And I was talking to her about where she gets her tobacco. And she goes, "Oh, I buy it from John Oliva. He has the best." So, so if Sandy Cobas says it, it must be true. And she claimed your Corojo was the best. I asked her, "What's your favorite?" She goes, "It's Corojo."
Sumatra too.
Well, she told me your Corojo that day, at least.
Yeah.
And then she put a Corona in my mouth and she lit it for me, gave it. What a great lady.
Eddie Super.
Okay, so, and my first question is, and I'm going to try to be fast. I'm sorry. I'm going back to Puro Sabor. I'm going to the Noxa factory that I believe you have some ownership in. I believe that's disclosed publicly, right? And
Yeah,
that's
we have
I'm very excited for that. Part of why I chose my group. My big regret is my tour group does not have Prosenisa on it. May I say that I have explicit permission from your family for that tour to switch buses and to go on the Prosenisa tour this year, please?
Of course, you can come and I'll personally take you through there. Okay.
That we have this recorded, right? Okay, and okay, deal, trato, excelente. Okay.
He's a lawyer, so watch
out. I'll say this one thing that David Perez was telling me, ASP was talking about, and he says manufacturers hate this. He says, he told me, he goes, "Look, I don't think broken tobacco," he's not talking short filler, but he says, if there's broken tobacco, he says it doesn't affect flavor. He was upset. He goes, "I think he says it doesn't affect flavor and it shouldn't sell for less." He also told me same thing with color, that basically color is an appearance issue, especially in wrapper. A discolored wrapper is not going to affect the taste. And he says, truthfully, from my perspective, of course, I'm the grower, it's just as good. I see you nodding your heads. Do you agree with those sentiments?
110%. Okay. And David's one of my best friends in this business. Yeah, we're in a complete agreement with that. And that, listen, I'm going to get crucified for this, but that's,
he made me stop recording, by the way.
That's an age-old negotiating point between growers and manufacturers. Okay. I can't use this. And then I go to Half Wheeler Cigar Aficionado and I see the wrapper they couldn't use on their $25 cigar. You know, we both understand that, you know, that's a negotiating thing.
I think he used those exact words, actually. So, okay, look, and like buying a house, right? You're in Spain, it's
yeah, we're not going to
the house where it's no good. Let's take a couple, right? Oh, now I'll buy it again. Ecuador, you talked a little bit. If we were to go to Ecuador, that's another unsung hero of the, or at least underreported. Like, what would we see? Like, I feel like the coverage is not really there. You always hear like, okay, we grow without shade, but I also see them growing wrapper, using wrapper cultivation techniques in Nicaragua, not sun-grown wrapper, but I think they're getting like 30% wrapper on that. So I don't really know what's going on there. So obviously they're growing in Nicaragua, Honduras, some sun-grown wrapper without shade. But can you walk us through what we might see, what we would see at the farms in Ecuador? And can you also talk about, is it non-wrapper grade Ecuador leaf, is that all binder, or does some of that go into filler and it's just not disclosed? And then thank you. I'm done. I'll stop for now, but love it.
what you would see is like any other tobacco farming operation. The reason we don't grow under shade in Ecuador, the reason you can't grow under shade in Ecuador is completely unique to Ecuador's environment. Tobacco but when we attempted to grow tobacco when we were first there, this is back when my grandfather was there, the tobacco comes out too thin. Ecuador happens to be unique in that respect. The tobacco comes out like toilet paper. It simply won't grow under shade over there. So that's really the only difference you'd see between that and any other tobacco wrapper operation. The binder and filler, yes, we do produce binder and filler. They're simply a byproduct of the wrapper crop that we get. Any tobacco that's not suitable for wrapper will go into binder, and the tobacco that's not suitable even for binder, we put into a tripa grade, a filler grade. But we don't produce a lot of Ecuadorian filler. I mean, most of it will go hopefully to wrapper, and then whatever doesn't goes into binder. There's a very small percentage of filler that we get out of those crops. I mean, very small.
Is that because binder sells for more, or is it just that Ecuador crop does not make good filler? Like, I'm curious, what would that taste like as filler? Is it good, or it's
good, and people do use the filler. It's just a volado. It doesn't have a lot of body. As you can imagine, it's real thin filler. I mean, it's great as a volado. If you know, I can't get into the nuances of blending, but as a cigar manufacturer, there's people that do buy it to use it to dress up their blends, but it's not going to give you it's not going to give you the flavors that a Honduras, a Nicaragua, Dominican, Mexican filler are going to give you. Okay, it's simply we sell because it just didn't. Yeah, to answer your question, didn't make it into a binder grade. Okay, and the binder does sell for more than the filler grade.
Well, thank you. Can't wait to see the Soviet tractors out on the farm. Nos vemos en esta liga.
Oh no, please. We try to get rid of those things.
Macy, many thanks for the questions and the very nice comments. Over to Mace.
Evening, gents. John, Trey, Reinhard, everybody. Great seeing you all. Yeah, I had a few questions, and I sort of wanted to lead on from how you guys were talking about sort of that analogy where you're talking about chefs and how they're, chefs are always sort of tinkering, and they got requests and they want a particular recipe and they're trying different things. I just wanted to figure out from your perspective, you guys have like 30 odd different manufacturers that you're working with. And is there anybody that you say is sort of tinkers more, or really sort of has an involvement at that sort of crop level to try and, that you guys work together with? Or are you guys kind of more, you try and discourage that and you want to focus on what you're doing and you know what you're good at?
Yeah, I think it's more that we know what we can grow well. We work with all our customers. They basically give us an idea of what they're looking for flavor wise, or a lot of times they know. I mean, these guys come up with their blends, so they're as intimate with my crop after looking at tobacco samples that I show them as I am. They know what they're looking for. So they go in there and they again, to use the example of how the flavor profile may change on where that leaf is picked on the stalk on that plant, what priming it comes, what level it comes from. A guy like Peping for one of my father's cigars that uses our wrapper, Pete Johnson with a tatuaje, they know what priming they're looking for, what texture they're looking for, and what color they're looking for, and what flavor that particular leaf is going to give. So it's almost like they're picking the ingredient that they want to use.
It has just fermented a little more and make it a little better than the next guy down the road or whoever's got the same product from Ecuador, same grown, same. That may be a little less expensive, but I'm doing what we're doing in the fermentation of it, and he'll know the difference when he goes out there and looks for all his ingredients. And mine, of course, is, I think.
Yeah, they'll even tell us when they want us to stop fermentation on it. Like Carlos Fuentes is a guy that we hold tobacco form, we ferment it, and he wants us to go to a certain point because, like him, a lot of these guys, they want to finish the tobacco themselves. They know where they want to be with the flavor on that thing once they finish that fermentation.
I'm guessing then that takes out a lot of the surprise. So you're never in a position where a particular crop comes out and maybe you try the cigar a year down the line. You're never surprised, or there's never a surprise element of this is a lot better than what we thought, or you know what I mean? Does that ever happen? But I'm guessing not, because they have so much control over it, and it's almost down to a science as to when they stop fermentation. So I'm guessing there's never any surprises really.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to remember they're trying to keep that product consistent. Like when you're making my father's cigars or Fuente Magars, okay, you want that cigar to taste the same every year, because a guy develops a taste, that becomes his favorite cigar, and so yeah, it makes it easier for me because I know where to stop and they know where to finish. And my goal is to always try to get that tobacco to taste the same every year. The things I don't want to taste the same are the things when they want something new.
Cool. And just a final question for me then, in terms of you sort of mentioned there where you tried to grow the Cameroon with the sort of Cameroon seed effectively, and it didn't come out the same way. Is there a piece of land, is there something that you guys have looked at and you thought, you know what, love to grow some crop over there that could give you something different, do you think? Or anything coming up on the horizon where you guys are like really excited about potentially a new piece of land, or land that you haven't cultivated on for a few years that you think actually is going to really bring something exciting in the years to come?
Yeah, well, we're always looking for new areas and new plots. Well, we've kind of held back because there's a difficult situation, and Ecuador is going through a very difficult situation right now with the government there. Not the government, but with ever since COVID, they're having some, the country's having some internal issues. So we've kind of held back, but yeah, we're always looking for different areas where we can try different things. Mostly what we've been doing is playing with seed varietals,
Yeah.
and making our own seed, and doing some crosses and stuff like that, where we can, and trying on different plots of our own land to see what comes out and what tastes different.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Hens.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mace, many thanks to you. What a joy to have the one and only George Brightman with us today as well. George, it's lovely to see you. Thank you so much for taking the time and joining us, and chime right in, brother. Good to see you.
Well, good to see you too, Reinhard, but also John and Trey, man, awesome to listen. The one thing that I'm struck by the way, I joined a few minutes late, so forgive me for that if I'm repeating, but I'm struck by the fact that the more things change, the more they stay the same. So I'm remembering back to the days when Angel was teaching, and he was talking about when he was first being a broker. One of the things that he said, and it's exactly the issue that you're talking about, is said, my job is to be able to sell everything that the farmer grows. So he said, I might have, one guy that's coming to me only for wrapper, but another guy needs binder and somebody else needs filler. So the reason I was a hero was because I could take care of all of that. Whereas if one company is buying it, maybe it doesn't work. He was awesome. It's like a giant. And one of the things that I wanted to bring out today is, and John, I know you'll remember this really well, is that, when he first went and saw Honduras, so he's still selling the last crop of Cuban tobacco, but he's farming in Honduras, and he goes, this is where we found the soil where we can grow the next generation of tobacco that's going to satisfy all these manufacturers. And the person that I think he found as a great work partner was Frank Yanesa, and what was happening with those guys. And I mean, I'll never forget 50 plus years ago, my first days in the business, I remember Bonsis. It's a brand that nobody talks about anymore, but the tagline for Bonsis was for the man who misses his Havana. And it had the most beautiful cigars. And I didn't know at the time, because I was in love with it. It was affordable for me then, but what it led me to was Punch and Hoyo. To this day, I use as like the gauge for where things are in the market, the Punch Rothschild factor. Like when I started in the business, a Punch Rothschild was 40 cents, right? And by the time you get to the 80s, it's like 80 cents. And then all of a sudden in the 90s, it's $8. and it keeps going. So it's like the ultimate gauge. But I will also never forget in the early 70s when you guys had another great partner, Lou Rothman with JR, and he was bringing out the JR Ultimate. And we were all like, oh, it's the same cigar we can buy for Hoya de Monterey or Punch. And then one day they came out with this Maduro wrapper in the JR Ultimate. And it was the most glorious thing anybody. And remember, that was a cigar from Honduras. So we figured, okay, it's from Honduras. It's all Honduran tobacco. But the secret weapon was that Nicaraguan tobacco that you guys were growing. And it was mind blowing. It changed everything. I'll never forget like looking at those cigars, and they were so beautiful. You didn't know whether you wanted to sleep with them or smoke them. They were absolutely the sexiest things on the market. And I'm telling you, man, it's so many times in my life I've witnessed a cigar which is a paradigm shift. It's like, oh, there's a new flavor, a new look, a new taste, something that's like nobody's seen it before, and it was always because somebody like Ernesto or Carlito was using tobacco from you guys. And all of a sudden, everybody in the cigar world is like, oh, we have to get some of that because if not, we're in the rearview mirror. The industry has just taken another leap forward.
Yeah,
and it's always the trail always comes back to you guys.
No, George. First of all, it's great seeing you, man. I haven't seen you in years. Yeah, no, we had that close relationship with. I mean, we were almost one company back in the day. And Lou for that matter. And that's kind of where I had the benefit of learning the cigar business from Frank Yanessa, my dad, my grandfather, and Lou Rothman,
and Danny Blumenthal.
And yeah, those tobacco. You remember Cuba Aliados, George, and Rolando wrappers on those cigars?
So beautiful, so beautiful. And I always point out to people, I say, hey, Rolando Reyes is really, look, Carlito and the Hemingways popularized across the market the return of figurados. In other words, oh my God, you can make fancy shapes like this instead of everything being a Parejo. But really, the guy that was like the master of these magnificent shapes, Salomon's, the Adamas, these giant things, Rolando Reyes Sr. And people forget, the guy that taught Rolando Reyes Sr. how to make those magnificent shapes was Ernesto's dad, Ernesto Sr., teaching him how to make those shapes using newspaper for molds. There were no molds in the factories, and it's like everything comes full circle. So I love the idea that Ernesto now is back making a cigar that's called Aliados and has these beautiful figurados. Like, again, the more things change, the more they stay the same circle. But again, to what my way of thinking, every time you look at a blend or some kind of innovation that's there, the trail always leads back to your doorstep. And we're all absolutely like in your debt. We our palates, our experience, our trust in who's a great cigar maker and who isn't is all from the people that are relying on Oliva tobacco.
No, we appreciate it, George. I mean, we've been trying to do the same thing for 90 years. That's all I'm doing. There's a lot of other guys that are growing great tobacco too. I just got to throw that. The Perez's are great and Mr. Placencia, so, but yeah, we appreciate it. We just listen, man, this is what we know,
Yeah.
And that's why we never really got really into the cigar bit, the cigar making side of it, but
well, thank God you didn't forget any of it either. Right.
No.
In other words, I like the idea that you guys, you got this great office and you got computers to keep track of everything. But at the same time, the guys that are working in the fields are doing the same things that your grandfather was.
Exactly. That hadn't changed, George. And you still got to take care of the crop. You still got to do the hard part, Yeah,
it's so fantastic. We're all so lucky. And you again, you said it, the best tobacco in the world always grows in the most challenging situations. And it continues to be true today. If there's something that's happening, like you look and you go, oh, this is a great crop. This is absolutely extraordinary. And that next year the job is going to be to reproduce, to do it again. But you go, okay, so what the hell is going to happen here? Is there going to be a hurricane? Is there going to be a volcano? Is there going to be political chaos. What's going to be the challenge that prevents us from just, staying in the field and the farms? But you guys somehow, man, you pull the rabbit out of the hat season after season after season, and every one of us, every cigar smoker around the world. I got to say, the one thing that makes me happy is that as a result of life going to shit and the world turning to crap in Cuba, and their output diminishing, the rest of the world now gets to figure out how great cigar makers are, and the wonderful things that have happened. Again, like I say, thanks to Oliva Tobacco.
No, we appreciate
We're
it.
all lucky for it. We're really all lucky for it.
We appreciate it. We appreciate it. We just, like I said, we we just try to keep things, like you said, we just try to, we try not to change anything, try to keep things as consistent as possible.
But let me ask you a quick. So Mace asked a really good question. He was talking about the idea of, are you guys going to come up? Is there some plot of land, or is there something going on that is like the new secret weapon, the thing that's going to pop out? No doubt, like I said, Ernesto will be the guy that introduces it to the world, and 3 years later, everybody's going to want to copy that. But I mean, when you talk about trying to create, because your answer was very interesting. You said, well, we're looking at creating, effectively what you're talking about is creating hybrids, crosses, right? If you come up with a success for that, right? So in other words, you go, my God, look at this, something happened here. We've crossed Corojo with whatever it is. What's the chance when you're thinking about it, odds wise? What's the chance that you're actually going to be able to repeat it? In other words, you can do it 1 year and it's magnificent, and you look and you go, this is the incredible tobacco. Well, is this going to happen again? Are the chances good that you can sustain a hybrid like that?
Yeah, George, I mean, we've done it, and listen, the thing with this thing is you've got to give these seeds more, you got to give these seeds like a 3-year
season.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? That's number one. Then number two, when I see something like that, I'll take it to a manufacturer and say, listen, man, this is what we're growing. And I got to have the okay, because you got to remember these crops, I've got to plant them. You know what I'm saying? So I'm doing an experimental crop with 5 acres. Okay. A guy falls in love with the tobacco or whatever. I need it. If you really, he's taking the chance on it. Now,
Right.
these cigar makers, these guys know when something tastes good and it's what they're looking for. So, but I got to have a commitment to, what do you want weight wise out of this tobacco before I make this investment in the field and take this chance, We've got a couple of hybrids that we've been working with. They're coming out fantastic, and we've already got them in the market. Our customers are selling them. I listen, my part is to keep my mouth shut and let them do their marketing and present it as they want. Yeah, that's why I say we're the gray man. We're the guys that go in and blow shit up, and then we're out of there, and nobody knows we were there. That's exactly how I like it. I like flying under the radar and let this. We don't have a marketing department here. You're looking at it.
Yeah.
I'm at the mercy of I work with my customers. They're the guys that know that part.
But the thing is that unlike the days when we were kids and cutting our teeth, sorry, Trey, this is dinosaurs talking, but when we were cutting our teeth, everything was, a guy walked in and said, do you have my cigar? And if you tried to move him to another size, he'd look at you like you had 3 heads. Now, the question that every cigar retailer deals with every single day is what's new. And to my way of thinking, there's only one answer to that, which is anything you haven't tried. But the thing is that the pressure still has to be what's going to happen. And listen, it can be, people can get excited. Oh, okay, so broadleaf, and then all of a sudden it's everybody wants a Mexican San Andres or something like that. But to me, it always comes home to what are the, to use the wine thing, what are the noble seeds? What are the things that have consistently produced extraordinary tobacco with real personality differences based on where it's grown, but it's the same seed back again.
Yeah, and George, that hadn't changed. That's why I say, when we do these hybrids, I mean, it's like a Cuban seed. Okay, the Cuban seed's going to be Cuban seed, man. It's just maybe we mixed it with something else here, but at the end of the day, it's said it's the parent seed is the overriding factor there. Again, in my opinion, what changes everything is where you grow it on the farm. There are different plots from one side of the road to the other that make tobacco taste completely different. And that's real. That's all I can do. It's I can't play around, try like with the Cameron. I use that as an example because we did Cameron
Right.
and we didn't like it. Okay. I didn't like the way it came out, and it's just not something I was going to do. We didn't see a future in it. So you try those things, and some of it works, some of it doesn't. And again, it's where you move that seed on that farm, and what these guys are going to do with it marketing wise.
But it's so to my way of thinking, it seems to me that one of the things that's changed is that you're able to pick and sort. Again, sorting is the difference between a great company and a good company, right? But it's like today, it's like there's more ability to sort and ferment specific to that zone in the farm, like the part that's by the road, and this one's on the hill, and that one's over there by the stream. Those things you're able to track in a way today that didn't used to be. In other words, stuff got lumped together, and then maybe the good manufacturers were able to sort the bales that they got and say, all right, here's what we're going to do with this, and work them out. But now you guys are like so specific and so incredible at going, all right, this tobacco presents this quality, so here's how we're going to ferment it and make it available to XYZ cigar maker specifically for that flavor. And you're the best partners in the world at that. Like, not just knowing what they want, but being able to foster, we're going to have more yield. We're going to have better results for you at this farm than the guy across the street.
Yeah, and George, it gets back to what you just said. I mean, part of why we do that now is the fact that everybody is looking for something different. So, basically on our end, that's what we had to do to provide that to the manufacturer so that they can satisfy that into the market. And don't forget, this isn't just happening, I think, with wrapper. This happens with filler too, because you see a lot of these blend changes are happening with different seeds are growing in Nicaragua and Honduras for filler blends, And the other thing, George, is the manufacturers' willingness now to try new things. Listen, when you're selling 500 million 858s, okay, it's hard to get a guy to say, listen, I want to try this thing now with Cuban seed on instead of Cameroon,
Right. No way. It's not happening. Well, so God bless you that you've been able to do both. So that's part of the magic act is you can continue to have, like, we got your little laboratory, we got these farms over here that are growing these new things, and let's try and experiment with that at the same time that you're producing enough yield to satisfy makers that have audiences that are loyal to, legacy cigar products.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you still have your segment of guys that want what they, the guy that smokes Padron, the guy that smokes a Fuente smokes a Fuente, but there that growing segment, especially with the younger guys, okay, that want something different, and that's to get back to your point, why we're doing all this different stuff on the land to meet that into the demand,
All right, listen, I've taken up a lot of your time. I got one thing to jump out on, and because I remember this from years ago, is the farms that Jeff Borshwitz is using for his Florida sun grown, is that the stuff that you guys developed in Gadsden years ago?
No, Jeff is in Clewiston. Yeah, I think Jeff's farm is in Clewiston in Orlando, or in that central Florida area. And we're much further north by the capital. Gadsden County, that area up there where they grew, we still own that farm, incidentally. Up in Quincy, Florida. That area is closer to Tallahassee on the Florida-Georgia border.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It was almost Georgia sun grown for where it was. But is there a chance that farm could come back to life and provide some tobacco for young Drew Newman's project?
It's his hunting lodge, man. No,
it's not that.
No,
it's not that.
We can't.
You're not going to get any 18-year-old kid anymore to go out there and grow a crop or go work in a tobacco field.
No, you're missing. You got to Tom Sawyer them. You got to say, we're going to teach you tobacco farming and get all these cigar nerds to be volunteers to work the farm.
Oh, yeah.
It's called summer camp, man. It's called summer camp. You go and you're gonna learn tobacco from the dirt up.
My dad did that to me when I was 8 years old, and I thought I was going to have a wonderful summer in Gadsden County, right? And I'm out there picking tobacco at 8. Okay,
exactly.
And they were
And
paying me
gummy.
25 cents a row. And these rows ran from Gadsden County to Leon County.
Exactly. Oh man, I love it. If only we had movies from that time, you know? I mean, can you imagine like that? Listen, guys, it's really, really been great to see you both. I'm so happy that Reinhard got you guys to break into your schedule to do this. It's just awesome. And like I said, I've taken up more than enough time of everybody, but I look forward to seeing you guys soon.
George, it was
well.
great seeing you,
Good
man.
seeing you, man.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
George, it's lovely to have you with us. Always a treat. And I would love to ask you specifically one question, George, and then I would like to extend the same question to John and Trey. And it's actually something Macy brought up in the chat. You spoke about the paradigm shifts throughout the decades. Could you pinpoint a few of those, like the biggest standouts or those quintessential paradigm shifts on behalf of the Oliva family that you think truly changed the pathways of the industry? And then I would love to extend the question to John and Trey, where they could probably name or pinpoint towards a few cigars featuring and proudly wearing their tobacco that they believe had a tremendous impact on changing the pathways of the industry.
Well, for me, like I said, the emergence of cigars from Honduras, specifically the Bonsis, Hoyo, and Punch lines from what was then Villazon cigars that were Frankinesa and using the Oliva family tobaccos. That changed everybody's perception about what could happen in the premium cigar. Post-revolution, that was the answer. The next thing that happened was Canary Islands and the emergence of, with Canary Islands relying on either Cameroon or a Connecticut shade, and so there were different farms involved in that. But then you go into the 80s, and it's what the Fuente family did with the specifically the Hemingway and then eventually the Don Carlos. But again, each of those featured a Cameroon wrapper, and then Carlito when they took on Ashton to make the Ashton cabinet in those same shapes with a wrapper that was absolutely magnificent. Again, thanks to the Oliva family. And then the next paradigm shifts. The things that happened are really Davidoff returning to the Dominican Republic shortly after Carlito births on the old Oliva farms, the Opus X project, and then the Padrones changed the world's perception about what's really happening in Nicaragua with the release of 1964. Once you get to the cigar boom, a lot of other things happen, but none of it would have been possible without those events. Those things changed everybody's perception about what was happening in the premium cigar world. And to my way of thinking, there's still stories that Honduras can tell because they were around so many of these pivotal moments. But again, for my way of thinking, the first time that I saw a JR Ultimate, which I thought was just a twin, a renamed version of something that was made for Villazon at that legendary factory, and that's it. When it had that beautiful wrapper from Nicaragua, it was, oh my God, there's something entirely different that can happen. And that foreshadowed Oya de Nicaragua entering the marketplace and blowing everybody's mind about what was possible. But it, the farmers there that Oliva was working with were the ones who kept continuously providing the answer about this is the tobacco that's going to change everybody's mind about what's the definition of the best cigar you can buy. And they've done it decade after decade. And so we're all lucky for it.
Beautiful. Trey, anything to add to that from your side?
Oh man, it's just relationship after relationship and cigar manufacturer that came on board and was successful and sold out and got the golden handcuffs. I mean, I could go on and on. That's part of the gig that we are into, but just doing and fermenting and keep on trying to do what we do every year with basically every year it's a different crop. You know, I can remember when I first started it, you know, oh, I got the magic bullet. I wrote everything down. This is what we got to do. This is when you do it. Huh. Boy, was I wasting my time, you know, and it took me about 3 years to figure that out. And then, but yeah, just consistently and shit, as far as my grandfather just coming and going and forging the relationships in these countries that, you know, it just takes an army of people. We don't do this alone. And we're very grateful for all these people of generations in Honduras and in Nicaragua that have worked for us and in Ecuador. So, yeah, like I said, being fair.
Yeah, I think part George brought up like a lot of the things, like as far as my time in the business, the things that I've seen that were really changed things were now I'm going kind of post cigar boom, because I came into the business about a year and a half before the cigar boom, which is obviously when Cigar Aficionado came out, and when George and I were around at that time. And the things that struck me as parting shifts were Enetico Perez Carrillo with La Gloria Cubana. Okay. When you had the establishment, Cigar Aficionado and Enetico made tremendous cigars. I mean, they were unbelievable and still does. But for the market and mass to accept now the Buckeye, which is a small cigar maker, the mom and pop shop, okay, that was just, that gave the impetus for a lot of these other small. You got to remember, we were selling tobacco to people like, and Atika was one of our original customers. He used to buy tobacco from my Uncle Martin here in Tampa. I mean, so that really gave acceptance to these Buckeyes. And then another thing was Pete Johnson. Okay, when Pete came out with Tatuaje and this different way of marketing cigars, and Pete was trying to make something that he tasted in Cuba, and those cigars put Pepin on the map. And Pepin Garcia is one of the great cigar makers in this business. Nobody will argue that. I think that changed the way people's willingness to accept all this new product from guys that weren't, you know, the old guard, guys that weren't, you know, guy in a Guayabera and, you know, that kind of thing. And then obviously Carlito Fuente, when he came out with Opus X and they told him that he couldn't grow wrapper in the Dominican Republic, and that people, that was what made the super premium cigar industry right there, super premium cigar. You can't take that away from Carlito. Is, in my opinion, and I'll say this, and I tell anybody that listens, Carlito's why these guys are able to sell $25 cigars and make works of art. Because I mean, the effort that this guy puts into, not, you know, the boxes are beautiful, the labels were beautiful. This guy, I was there when he was coming up with, when it was known as Project X from Planet Z or whatever he called it, and I couldn't believe this guy was going through boxes and artwork, and I'm like, wow, this is unreal. I had no idea. And Carlito really made the Opus. I mean, the Opus was really what created made cigars a real luxury brand.
Absolutely right.
I mean, my grandfather, I can tell you, my grandfather, this isn't just Carlito, this was all these guys. When they were selling $10 cigars, my grandfather was bewildered. Okay.
Who's spending that money? Who's spending that money?
That's
right?
how much.
And now you're right.
Yep.
It's not just 25 cigars, it's $50 cigars, $75 cigars, $100 cigars. And none of it happens without the birth of Opus and the recognition that this is tobacco. It literally is the biggest paradigm shift that we've seen is, oh my God, there's a new flavor. There's a new taste in the marketplace that no one else has been able to achieve. It's not a Dominican cigar. It's not a Honduran cigar. It's not a Nicaraguan cigar. It's this other thing. And everybody else wanted to do the same thing. And to this day, we're still looking at brands that are popping up that are imitations of Tatuaje. Everybody wants to be the next Pete Johnson. But you know, you don't replace the like, you know, we used to talk about Ernestico as he's the overnight sensation that was 25 years in the making.
Yeah, exactly, George. That's a great way of putting it. It just
Anyway,
got
love you guys. Appreciate it.
the thing was the same way, man. Okay.
Absolutely. No question. But what's great is that there's now a vehicle and there's this huge landscape of cigar media, not just, light 'em up and things like Half Wheel, which are, studiously following all the developments in the market. But there's this massive landscape of cigar media that allows input for all these people to show their appreciation. Whereas before, there was really only one way, it was like, are people walking in and opening their wallets and buying it at a cigar store? And today, there's so many different ways for a cigar to become popular, to enter the imagination and to drive people to want to go seek it out. And that makes us all the beneficiaries. We're all really fortunate about that. But again, it doesn't happen if you guys aren't working your magic with the land.
Yeah, and George, listen, the thirst for knowledge from cigar smokers is unreal. I mean, that it's unreal. I mean, people have a passion with this thing, which you kind of, when I started, kind of took for granted. But I mean, it really is. People want to know every aspect. I think it's great. I think
which is all the more reason why you should recruit them to become workers, employees, and your micro pats right there. You can have a workforce. You can have a white collar workforce at a farm in Florida before you know it. The problem might be getting them to come back the next year, but there's always a new crop of suckers. We should call it the Barnum and Bailey Farm.
Yeah.
I love you guys. All the best.
George, take care, man. It was good seeing you.
Yeah, thanks, brother.
Macy already signed up, so you have at least one stewarding the land there.
Yeah.
I just want to say Jeff Borshowitz turned down my free labor on his farm. It's free and I won't even accept it.
One very brief question, Trey. You kind of triggered me when you mentioned the experiences of the challenges with year after year, you're working with completely different natural circumstances and changing variables. When nature gives you something and it changes everything that you had to come up with in years prior, how much of that can you adjust and make up for in the pre-industry and the way that you go with the tobacco through the curing barns and the fermentation? Or is it more down to the manufacturers and the blending, readjusting primings, or ever so slightly changing their blend recipe in order to maintain consistency? Or is that something that you can also kind of like condense a little bit and compress a little bit with the pre-industry and the tobaccos that you ultimately supply them with?
Yeah, I would think I have to cure that myself in the barns. And if not in the barn, in the pilon. And clean up a lot in that pilon. I try. And when Mother Nature shits on you, that's where you can clean it up, in that pilon, before it gets to the manufacturer. The manufacturer's already gonna be wanting to see something clean, and he's going to be more understanding. But believe me, next year, with all the rain I've had in Ecuador, and I know it's coming, and there's nothing I can really do. I'm going to try to ferment, and they're going to try their best in those barns in that 45, 75 days they got. But what goes in is what goes in. You cannot change that. And yeah, answer your question, I have to clean that up somewhere in the pre-industry.
Perfect. Thank you. Over to Manuel, who had his hand up for quite a while. See you, buddy.
Nice to see you too. No, I just have a question. I mean, it relates kind of to what was just said, but this year in Ecuador, you guys have some pretty bad weather, and there's been political crisis, organized crime. How has all of these factors impacted your operations, and how do you guys see it impacting the cigar makers in the future with supply and things like this?
Well, supply next year is definitely going to be short, because you got to remember, what happens to us happens to everybody else that's growing tobacco there in Ecuador also. So El Nino hit Ecuador this year. This is the worst one I've seen since the other bad one we had was in I think it was either 1999 or I think it was 1999. This one's even worse. So, I mean, we've lost a lot of tobacco this year. There's seeds. Yeah, there's seeds that I'm not going to grow because they're not going to make it through Connecticut's very susceptible to Saskatchewan, which is a green spot that gets on it when you have a lot of wet weather. We're going to cut that back. Sumatra is another one, especially in the lower priming stuff, that is really susceptible to that. So we're cutting back on that. The political situation has kept us from expanding and looking at new land for right now until we see how the country is going to stabilize. I mean, not to go into too much detail, but we ourselves have been victim to some of this this crime that they've had there in in Ecuador, I'm sorry. So I'm not looking to expand right now until we see the political climate there stabilize. And obviously this El Nino will move through, and we had this one-off year that was one of these poor years that you get once every 20 years. I mean, you kind of deal with El Nino or El Niña, La Niña every certain crop cycles, but this particular El Nino this year was an ass kicker. And so you're going to see it's going to hit the supply of Ecuador wrappers to the manufacturers next year. So that is a function that gets back to the function of traditionally manufacturers try to hold 2 years inventory so that they're always aging their inventory. So where they're going to be on inventory they're already holding to meet whatever demand they have is going to be, I think, predicated a lot on how much inventory of wrapper they're holding.
Yeah, it seems like this year was the perfect storm of
It was a perfect
thing that could have gone wrong went wrong.
It's like nothing I've ever seen. But that's the nature of our business.
Yeah, a few years ago you had the political instability in Nicaragua, and like you guys say, tobacco grows in the worst possible places. But
you got to learn to become like a Bedouin. You move from place to place. You're just a nomad.
But one clear consequence of that will be effects on the price that we see, both for tobacco and cigars, right?
If you can convince the manufacturers of that, I'm all with you. Okay. No, it'll affect the quantity. Okay, it'll affect the quantity. Obviously, you have to go up to make up whatever losses that you have. Okay, but the window for that is very small. We're just, we're going to try to take care of the tobacco that we got out, and the way that I look at this is, you take the stuff that you were able to harvest, and you get as good of it as you can. You're already going to get a higher price for it. So that should make up for your losses. So hopefully, what we took that was viable is good tobacco. That's mostly what we're going to hope to make up the difference in the loss. But it's not going to be. I mean, this year we had a banner year. We had a hell of a crop in 21, and 22 was a disaster. I mean, we had a beautiful crop last in 21 or 22, right? Yeah, 22. I'm sorry. Yeah. Well, we had a hell of a crop in 21 and 22, but this year's a mess, and that's part of what we do. I mean, that's part of what we have to learn to expect.
And part of the beauty and also the challenges of working with Mother Nature.
Yeah, dream and the nightmare.
Ian.
Thanks, John, Trey. Lovely to meet you. And I had the privilege of going to your factory when I went to Pura Sabor, and really enjoyed it. And I love Gloria Cubana, so I'm pleased that you're making those. And I'm surprised at how many people you supply to. The question actually that we were asking before you came on was that you don't supply the Oliva cigar company. Is there a reason for that, or just chose not to? And then my main question was to ask a bit about the farming. I mean, at the end of the day, you are farmers, and tell us a bit about how you do the quality control in the fields, because you say, what goes in is you know, you don't get something good if it doesn't go in good. What's your typical day of sort of sorting out the problems in the farms, and how do you deal with that?
To answer your first question, we did sell tobacco to Oliva Cigar when Hibeto and the family owned it. We were selling them their wrappers when they started. We were selling a lot of their wrappers. Hibeto started growing, after Hibeto sold, he started growing tobacco for the new factory. And Hibeto and us worked together. The Olivas, we have a great relationship with Hibeto Olivas and Carlos Olivas. They're great guys. We do, when they need some part of tobacco that they can't get from Hibeto, they do in fact buy some tobacco from us. As far as the farming question,
Yeah, just the quality control.
Yeah.
How do you what are you doing with your farmers? Because at the end of the day, they've got to do it right. So how do you sort of control what they're doing in the fields?
The guys that we have that work on our farms have been working with us since we started. The guy that runs our operation in Ecuador learned under my grandfather. Okay.
Wow.
There is, I hate to say this, and I don't mean to sound ambiguous. That is the art in growing these crops, is that and the man's name is Enrique Lopez. When you go into a tobacco field, you have to know when that tobacco is ripe and ready to be primed. That is a skill in and of itself. That's one quality control issue. The second part, and to me the most important part, and this is very difficult in Ecuador because of the weather that we deal with over there, the humidity and all that, is the curing of that tobacco in the barn. That, to me, in our industry, requires the most skill, because you can have, and I tell this to everybody, you can have beautiful tobacco in the fields. I've been to 1 million farms where everybody's telling me, look how beautiful this crop is. And this thing goes into the barn and it comes out the other end and it was a disaster because the people working that barn didn't know what the hell they were doing. And we've had that, when we get new guys working on the farm, that are the guys that watch the barns for us, they have to be there with Enrique all the time. This man, literally, the hair will stand up on his arm and he knows when to hit the heat in the barn or whatever. These are things that you're just born with. And so on quality controls, how you wilt that tobacco in the barn, to me, is the most important aspect of what we do, because that's where you're going to have your biggest issue with the quality of your crop. This guy hits the barn too early with heat, and he's going to green all this beautiful brown wrapper that you see, that now it turns into almost I don't want to call it candela, but it's this greenish cast. It's awful looking, So that's where the quality control takes place on our end. When to pick, when that tobacco's ripe, how you're taking care of that tobacco in the field, and when that tobacco goes into the barn, and how you treat it and wilt it in that barn. When you get those colors to set and everything else like that. Because again, what I'm selling is flavor, but what these guys are buying is appearance. Okay.
What about dealing with, mold and insects and so on, and right at the start, because you're doing wrapper, so it has to look good as well. So somebody was saying, well, even if it looks ugly, it'll still smoke well, but people won't buy it. So how do you sort of control that?
We control that through we don't get blue mold, knock on wood, in Ecuador, which is probably the biggest scourge of a tobacco crop. But we're moving more with social responsibility and stuff like that. We're moving more towards organic pesticides and stuff like that to kind of hold those things at bay. Okay. We're always going to get sections like you get black shank, whitefly is another thing that you get in Ecuador. You go in there and you're constantly monitoring that thing with bug traps and everything else like that. And you're just trying to hold those diseases at bay best you can with whatever fungicides, whatever pesticides that you can to eliminate that problem. Ecuador seems to have less of a problem than that than Honduras and Ecuador, and that's simply a based on geographic location, I think. Because that blue mold spore travels through the jet stream in the United States. It'll start up in Kentucky on a cigarette crop, move to the Connecticut Valley, and come all the way down to Honduras and Nicaragua.
Thank you. Most interesting. Really enjoyed it, and best of luck. And here's to another 90 years.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Great, John. It's fascinating to see that we have so many questions, and people are so interested in taking a deep dive together with you. And these are true treasures, and I cannot thank you enough for everything that you share with us and give us the opportunity to better understand and to learn what's truly behind the tobacco and the raw material that goes into all these cigars, because it makes all the difference. And I can't even tell you how much we appreciate it, and how grateful I am. Dejan still has a question here with me. He's freezing his balls off on his balcony in Vienna because it's getting quite chilly over here. So we'll give him an opportunity to ask his question, but we of course want to be most respectful of your time, gentlemen.
It's a short question. Thank
all
you.
good, Dejan.
Thank you, Reinhard. It's a short question. I would just like to know, do you entertain walk-ins to your place where you can show to customers how you ferment tobacco, how you what you do with it, and do you explain the whole process, or do you have parts of the process which are secret to you and you don't disclose them?
No, we welcome anybody that wants to come look at the processing facility. On the farms in Ecuador, we're not really set up for that, and that's kind of where I try to keep that to ourselves. But the fermentation is open. We don't have any secrets. I mean, and anybody's welcome to go over there. We welcome people to go over there and look at what we're doing over there. I think I'm very proud of what we do in Nicaragua on processing our wrapper tobacco. The gentleman that we have there working for us, Gus Goudas, our operations manager over there, has done a phenomenal job, and he's come up with some very innovative ways, like the way we ferment fillers and stuff like that that we welcome people to go look at.
And you show all of this. You show how you ferment it and how you age it. You show exactly how you do it. It's not a secret.
Yes. And if you're lucky, you'll have Trey there to take you through Trey will take you through.
Anybody you want, get my information from Reinhardt, and you're more
I might just do it. I have been there once, and I might do it again.
You're welcome anytime. You're welcome anytime.
Anyone in the Light 'em Up show, get my information. You're more than welcome to come to Nicaragua. We'll pick you up at the airport. You can stay at my house, and I'll show you anything you want to know about fermentations of tobacco.
I might just hold on to
there
that,
a week a month. A week a month.
Now, whether you come back after the week with him is a different story.
That's a lovely invitation. And great, John, to both of you again, most heartfelt thank you for being so kind and so open and willing to share with us. I can only hope that by interviews, shows like today's, a few more people who love and appreciate tobacco and cigars can understand the incredible contributions that you have made to this world that we're all fascinated with and that we all love so dearly. And it means the world to me to have you join us and to have you share with us some of your experience, your knowledge, your expertise. And I think we need more of that for all of us, for all the cigar loving community, to better understand what goes into every single one of the cigars that we enjoy, and the exceptional and incredible people behind that. And you and your entire family, you've been right there at the forefront, even though behind the scenes and less visible to the outside world, but you have always been at the forefront of carrying that flame and keeping that flame alive for all of us to enjoy exceptional cigars. So thank you from heart for that. And again, thank you so much for joining us today here at the Light 'em Up Lounge and sharing so much wonderful information with us.
Thank you, Reinhard. We appreciate it.
No, man, we appreciate guys like you, man. Are you kidding? I get up and do this every day. It's no big deal.
It's much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Trey, John, Oliva Jr. It was lovely to see you and wonderful to spend time with you.
Thank you for having us. Appreciate y'all guys tuning in. Have a good day.
The very best to you all. Stay safe, stay well, and light them up. Goodbye, everybody.
Okay.